Hello, Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce members. This is Drew Kamp, President and CEO of the Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce for our February 25th weekly legislative update. We're 1 week out from the first funnel and a couple weeks away from the next legislative funnel. And what that means is for the next legislative funnel in a few weeks is that bills will have to have passed the House or the Senate and then passed a committee in the respective chamber of which it has not yet passed by that time. Otherwise, it's dead. Exemptions include Ways and Means bills, appropriations bills, and leadership bills. A few big things that I wanted to make sure we touched on this week. First, I wanted to thank everyone who participated, not only as the legislators who were Senator Shipley and Senator Dawson, but also Representative Segrist and Representative McConkey on our legislative roundtable over the lunch hour. We also had about 40, I believe, attendees virtually as well. Thank you all for attending too. In addition to thanking our sponsors at the event, I wanted to just thank our sponsors one more time for the legislative roundtables. Sponsors are Advanced Southwest Iowa, U.S. Bank, Black Hills Energy, and Southwest Iowa Association of Realtors. And the small business sponsors are Pinnacle Bank and Telpner Peterson Law Firm. We thank them for their ongoing support that allow us to be able to provide such amenities and programs and services and resources to our members. So thank you very much to not only the legislators, but the attendees and the sponsors as well. Touching on some key policy items this week, the big one, the elephant in the room, was obviously the major tax reform proposal that passed yesterday, the House and the Senate, and is headed to the governor's desk. She's fully anticipated to sign it. It'll be a really good thing for her to be able to advocate on behalf of the state of Iowa and her leadership as governor to provide information on having accomplished that during her rebuttal to President Biden's State of the Union on Tuesday evening. So that'll be something to watch for. And obviously, we probably would expect her to sign that before then, as well as you would imagine. So that's something that is important, not only to Iowans who are looking for potential tax relief, but important for organizations such as ours, because chambers and business advocacy organizations have been advocating for tax reform for years. We saw some in 2018, but we continued to have needs in that space. And we were really happy with Senator Dawson leading the charge in the Senate, our own local senator, obviously chairing the Ways and Means Committee. But then also over in the House, we have Brent Segrist and Charlie McConkey, both in the Ways and Means Committee over there. And we thank them all and their colleagues for their work on getting this done. Just a few key things that the proposal includes, and granted, and just mind you, this is a compromise between the Senate, the governor, and the House. And it is obviously expected to be signed by the governor in the near term prior to her providing the rebuttal to the State of the Union on Tuesday. Some key things that it includes: on the personal income tax side, it over 5 years ratchets the rate down to 3.9%, puts us much more in line with our neighboring states and our competitors, especially as a border community. That's something we always appreciate. It also includes corporate income tax reform. Ratchets that down to 5.5%, which makes us very competitive as well with neighboring states that we're trying to compete with for projects and investment. So that is very, very much appreciated. On some different specific provisions that are also worth noting, there's some benefits to some farmers' income and tax credits there, income tax exemptions and things along those lines for them. There's also a retirement income tax exemption. So no longer, once it's fully implemented and down the line in a few years, retirement income will not be taxed in the state of Iowa. Also another attraction piece, especially to that obviously retired demographic. On the corporate income tax side of things, there was an inclusion of, in ratcheting that number down to 5.5%, there was inclusion of changes to some tax credit programs. So the research activities program is one that's drawn the ire a lot of in the legislature, just due to the fact that it's refundable and there's lots of money that's getting doled out by the state each year to entities who are receiving it in excess of their tax liability. So what they did is over 5 years, it'll ratchet down 10% each year to be at 50% after those 5 years going forward. There's also some other tax credits that are included, like the Endow Iowa tax credit had some changes. I believe the cap was $100,000 for claimants, but then also the historic tax credit and the redevelopment tax credit, some that we've used in our community for some development projects. Think of like what the 712 and some other entities are doing around town to restore some of these historic venues or just redevelop some brownfield or grayfield sites. Those will ratchet down in time to 75% refundability, just largely to have pay for some of that corporate income tax reform that was done as part of the bill. What it does not include anything regarding the sales tax and kicking in I will for the outdoor recreation and natural resources trust fund. That is something that Senator Dawson has said that they will take up in a separate bill to be looked at. That's something obviously that has implications for local option sales tax. So we'll continue to monitor that as we go forward. I know the mayor has continued to provide some good information and advocacy and information as to some of the potential impacts that could have. But we'll continue to work with our local government officials, aka the mayor, council, and also Senator Dawson as he looks forward to putting forward a bill to kind of talk about how we can maybe look at kicking in Iowa and doing some investing in our natural resource and outdoor recreation. On the other topics that were covered, that was by far the biggest thing, obviously, this week that happened, as you can imagine. That was historic tax reform. Obviously, that's a very big thing, and they have every right to be extremely proud of that because, like I said, we've been advocating for that for a very long time. They did pass construction manager at risk as well. That's something that's been in the works for years as well. Master Builders of Iowa and some other partners came together to make that happen. They did see that pass yesterday. So not only did they debate that, and that was a very tight vote, but they also debated, obviously, the tax proposal. So they had a very busy day in the House specifically on that yesterday. So we appreciate their work on that. We do continue to see information coming out with budget targets. The House and the Senate both have their budget targets to put forth for the 7 appropriating committees. That'll then get us to the end of session. Now that the tax proposal is gone through and the school funding bill has gone through, largely budget, obviously, to get done. We have the REC coming up here in a few weeks. Rumblings are, obviously you don't know until it happens, but that the March numbers may be higher than December, which means they'll have to use December's numbers anyways for their budget projections, which means obviously what they have now would be of value because that's what they would be using for FY 2023. So that's something we'll have to watch here in the not too distant future as they continue to debate those pieces and how that'll impact some large entities here in the community, like say, for example, Iowa Western Community College, as Brent talked about, and the legislative roundtable. Another few bills that are being looked at, and this is specifically in Senator Dawson's Ways and Means Committee in the Senate. There's a sales tax exemption bill on aircraft parts and maintenance. That's important because it would make us way more competitive with our bordering states. Every other state has this. We also already have some attractive pieces with our property tax system for people who house their airplanes here in Council Bluffs or Iowa versus, say, Nebraska. So that's something we think that could definitely have value and could recoup some additional funds. And the senator talked about in our roundtable as well, that they are looking for some pay-fors in that to make sure that if they are exempting, they are also putting in some revenue in it to kind of balance that out. So that's an important piece to note as well. Land banks moved forward out of committee from the Senate Ways and Means Committee this week. That's something Cheryl Garst and 712 and others have really been watching closely to really add as an additional tool in the tool belt as they try to develop some properties throughout the community. Port authorities is moved right on to the debate. It's eligible for debate on the Senate floor. That's something we hope we will see move forward in the not too distant future. That's an important bill for us and some different developments on the riverfront on both sides of the river. So we think that that'll be hugely impactful, and we're already working with Omaha to try to make sure that we can have those uniformly between the two states as well. Workforce bills continue to be looked at. Those are going to be tough with those pieces with unemployment reform, medical malpractice, and trucker tort reform. Those are all things that are having a hard time passing themselves, and then they combine them into 3. So you can imagine that makes it even harder in a lot of ways to pass. But we do continue to watch those very closely, especially med-mal, because it's a huge workforce issue for our hospitals and healthcare providers here who are trying to compete with Nebraska, who does have those non-economic damage caps. There is some sports gaming bills being talked about as well. There's additional revenue being brought in by sports gaming. It's obviously important that money is captured and then it's been able to be reinvested back into the communities, like we have seen the way it is done with Iowa West, with $500 million plus that they've reinvested in the area. So we want to make sure that that bill is not only including, the proposal is to have it include counties without community foundations, to really have it go to that, as Brent talked about in our legislative roundtable. He's obviously, and others in our community and our representatives are talking about, we need to make sure the QSOs, aka Iowa West, are receiving some of those funds as well, because they are already doing a lot of that. They are doing that work and they're doing great things in the communities they represent, and they need to make sure that they're included in getting those additional funds as well, so that they can continue to make investments in the community as they so well do. And we are all aware of that because, as I said on the call, most, if not all of us, have either directly benefited or know someone who has directly benefited from the good works of the Iowa West Foundation. With that, that does conclude our our update for this week. There continues to be a lot of different things happening at the Capitol. We do anticipate them getting out on time, which is in a couple weeks here in the not too distant future. So we are looking forward to continuing to work with our legislators as we kind of close things out as in the session and move into that budget conversation and some of those other proposals and issues that I talked about earlier. But one thing I wanted to touch on as well is Senator Dawson really touched on it in our legislative roundtable. We have a lot of positive momentum right now, not only for Council Bluffs, but for Southwest Iowa. There's a litany of reasons of why that's the case. There's a ton of people both in the in the Iowa legislature that are helping push those things forward and making sure that that is something that we are seeing those benefits. But there's a ton of people locally who are doing it as well. You know who you are. So thank you very much for all the work that you're doing, both those people at the state level, the county level, the local level, others who are active in the community. Just thank you very much, because as Senator Dawson said, I couldn't agree more. There's a lot of good things happening here in the community, and there's a lot of positive momentum here in our community. So thank you for the role that you are all playing in that. With that, I will close out the legislative update and just say, as I always do, thank you very much for your ongoing support and engagement. We look forward to continuing to work with you, and we hope you have a nice rest of the day.